What's going on, guys? It's TJ with Darpino Media, and today we're talking about how to get cinematic footage using only your iPhone. Alright, first things first, the camera app that comes on your phone is already great as is. However, to get it to the next level, you really want to have control over every single aspect of that phone. In order to do that, we have to use a third-party app. And the best one that I've found so far is Filmic Pro. So you're going to want to go ahead and download the Filmic Pro app. In this video, I'm not going to go too in-depth as to all the specifics in frame rates and white balances and shutter speeds and all that. I'm going to show you guys a few settings and a few techniques as to how I got the footage that I showed you guys earlier. So let's go ahead and dive right into the app. Alright, so the first thing I would do was to go ahead and open up the Filmic Pro app. And it's going to pop up and you're going to have a screen that looks like this. The first thing I would set is to go into this little gear right here, click on the settings, and you're going to see all of these options pop up. The first setting here is resolution, which is where you can pick what size and what quality you want the film to actually be. They have 4K all the way down to HD 720 or 1080p HD, and this down here is the actual quality of the actual file itself. So I always choose Filmic Extreme to have the top quality you could possibly get out of it, and I typically am going to try and shoot in 4K whenever I can, just to get the most quality as well out of that. Then you're going to want to go back into the settings menu again, click on frame rate, which is the next setting, and 24 frames per second is the typical standard speed, kind of cinematic look. So if you're looking for something that's just regular speed and maybe someone talking, or if it's yourself kind of doing like a marketing video or just a vlog, I would go with 24 frames per second. Then as we go up the line here, we can go all the way up to 60 frames per second in 4K. And what 60 frames per second is going to do for you is allow you to do slow motion. In 60 frames per second, you can slow it down all the way till 40%. Without skipping any frames, and it'll look really great in slow motion. Another benefit to having 60 frames per second is that you can actually leave it in 60 frames at full speed and it doesn't look too bad. So it kind of gives you the option to do slow-mo or regular speed, which is great when you don't know whether or not you want to slow down everything or if you want to keep it full speed. So we have to go back in here and go down to 1080p, because it won't allow you to do 120 frames per second in 4K, and 120 frames per second is exactly what I use to film that clip. 120 frames per second you can slow all the way down to 20%, and it gives you super slow motion, and it's really smooth. These two settings right here, is the top one is actually going to be what your frame rate is, which we're set at 120 frames per second, and the bottom one is where you want it to play back. So if you want it to actually save in your camera as slow motion, and that way you don't have to put it into post-production and slow it down, you can actually take this and push it all the way down till you get to 24 frames per second, or wherever you want it to be at, but I would suggest going back to 24 frames per second. That way, when you actually finish recording what you're recording, it will play back in your phone as slow motion, and then if you wanted to speed it back up, you could always speed it back up in post. So there's a lot of other things in here that you can mess with. Once you get a frame rate and all your settings where you would like them to be, you can go in here into presets, and you can see here I have a bunch of stuff saved already, and you can go down here and save current setting as a preset, name it, I'm gonna name it vlog, not glog. Now we have our setting right here, and whenever we want to go to those settings, we just click it and we're good to go. Okay, and over here, this is where you're going to set your exposure. So if you drag this around and you find where your exposure is going to be best, then once you find your exposure, you can click on it and it'll stay in that exposure. So it won't change your exposure and change lightness and darkness in the middle of you shooting, which is terrible, and you don't want that to happen. This right here is going to be your focus. So wherever you want to be focused at, you can just take this, drag it around where you want it to be focused, and click, and it'll stay focused in that distance. If you like to use autofocus, you can double click on it and it'll be autofocus right there. And if you want to save it as autofocus and kind of click it and lock it into autofocus, you can use that. Other than that, we're ready to start shooting. And if I were to take this and shoot something right now, because we're in 60 frames per second, let's just move this a tiny bit. So it'll actually save in my phone right there. So when you're shooting with your iPhone and you want to kind of get that really cool steady shot, slow motion is really the king, because if you shoot normal speed on an iPhone handheld, it's going to look pretty ugly. Some phones actually have some really great stabilizers. The one that's in the iPhone XR is not that great. It's okay, but actually in the Filmic Pro app it has its own stabilizer, but it's still, you know, work in progress. You'd be much better off with buying like the DJ Osmo Mobile for your phone, or the crane, Zhiyun crane for your phone. That way you can get that steady footage if you want to do that in regular speed. If you do slow motion at 120 frames per second, it slows it down enough that you won't see those little jitters, and you can actually get some really great footage. Actually, all the footage that I shot on that little clip was actually handheld. I did not use a gimbal or anything like that. Alright, well that's all I've got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy it, you can connect with me on any of the social medias, Instagram, Facebook, subscribe here on YouTube. Other than that, get shooting. Hello? Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm right in the middle of filming something. Can I call you back? Okay. Oh, wait. Alright, sure. Alright. Steven Spielberg, he's always calling me for tips and stuff like that, so it wasn't really Steven Spielberg. It was a joke. All right.